Hello everyone, hopefully you can hear us and see us. Sorry, I'm just setting up the view real quick. For some reason it reset. Oh no, you can see my entire messy office. Okay, let's just cut that out. Perfect. And also there's a lag. Or delay. Alright, all fixed. Hello everyone. Oh wait, we haven't got that there. Okay, now it's all fixed. Alright, we'll be starting in just a second. We're starting early today. I like this time. We should do this time every week. The earlier the better.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty fine with that actually too.
We might have to move the end meet back 30 minutes maybe. The end of the week meeting we normally do with the rest of the team.
Yeah. Should be able to do that.
Okay. Let's pull up my notes. I feel like it's been ages since we did this podcast.
I'm gonna have the video on, so
okay.
I'm gonna have to say clap.
That's fine.
Instead of
all right, I'm recording.
All right, I'm recording too. 3, 2, 1, clap. Hey everyone, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 321 for August 4th, 2023. We're back with the Windows Central Podcast with myself, Daniel Rubino, and Zach Bowden for another exciting episode. We got a lot on the agenda here this week, but we're going to try to keep it short because I got to get out of here. But that's fine. We got the Windows 11 news, of course. There were some new insider builds, including a really cool RGB tie-in that Microsoft is apparently building out. Well, we already know about the RGB stuff, but this was a little bit more nuanced that came. Plus, there was a special tool that leaked, and we'll explain why that was kind of a big deal and how Microsoft probably doesn't want a lot of people talking about it because it's going to screw up things for them. But Zach will explain what it all means. Surface Go 4 with ARM is a no-go. So that's unfortunate. That's the headline. That's pretty much all there is to say about that one, but we'll go into a little bit more detail, of course. And related to that, we'll talk about the what we think would be the finalized plans for Surface this fall. We weren't here. Well, I wasn't here last week. I was in South Korea with Samsung as they announced what was expected to be the the Samsung Galaxy Fold 5 and the Flip 5, as well as the new tablets and watch. I've been using the phones, so I have them here, and I'll share my thoughts. I've been a Flip user I had the first one and the third one, and I did buy the Fold 4, but I did return it, and I wrote a couple articles about it, about why I returned it. This is, of course, during the time of Surface Duo 2. So I'll see whether or not Samsung addressed my concerns about what I think about the Fold 5 so far. And I will be doing a review on it. It'll be not a super in-depth review, but it'll be one coming next week, as well as the Flip. And then Zach's going to talk about his review for the Robo and Kala, which, if you've never heard of, you are forgiven because most people haven't. It is the Surface Pro alternative device that came out. We talked about it a few weeks ago. So Zach's going to share his final thoughts. And then if we get around to thing of the week as well, I did see the Barbie movie. I don't know if that'll be my thing of the week. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I am not too bad. Had a pretty busy week, I feel like. We've been doing lots of content internally for back to school, as well as obviously we did some big stories this week around Surface and Windows with that tool, which we'll talk about in a minute, which did numbers. Like, for some reason, everybody wanted to know what that tool was. It was the most popular article of the week on our site, which was nice to see, I guess. But other than that, yeah, I'm not too bad. How have you been? I know you've sort of had a half vacation week.
Yeah, I've been trying to, a lot of it was adjusting. I got home, coming home from South Korea was super fascinating. I got up at 8:30 in the morning, South Korea time. And my flight was, what time was it? I think it was like 7:20 p.m. But I had to check out at the hotel, and then we had to get there early and all that kind of stuff. So my flight was like 7:20 p.m. But then I landed in the U.S. at 12:30 a.m. the next day. I was basically up for about like over 30 hours by the time. I mean, I slept a little bit on the airplane, of course, but obviously that's not like a sleep. So it was a little bit crazy coming back home again, and it took me a couple of days to readjust. Actually, adjusted fine going out there. I felt fantastic while I was out there, which was
Wow.
kind of interesting. But yeah, coming back was kind of rough. So there is that. I do have another trip, of course, I mentioned before, Malaysia coming up with Intel in the coming weeks. That's going to be even worse. But it'll be, well, at least for travel, it'll be a fun trip, though. And I'm sure Intel, they always do really good stuff, but we'll have more on that. All right, but let's jump into the Windows 11 news. Of course, there were new builds this week, as well as that tool you were just talking about. So why don't you explain what that is?
Yeah, we'll start with the builds. We'll cover last week's build as well because we weren't here last week. Build 23511 rolled out last week, and it had a couple of minor things. It had an updated Windows Spotlight interface. They keep toying with that, but I think they've finally settled on this sort of widget-looking thing with like a preview of all of the wallpapers of the week, the 4 different ones, and then a description of what it is, and plus a bunch of different Bing search suggestions. If you want to learn more about the image itself, you can do that. That does look to be basically final now and will likely ship with the 23H2 release. Microsoft is also adding a new thumbnail hover preview thing for recommended files in the start menu. So when you hover over, say, a recent Word document that you see under the recommended area and start, you'll get like a more rich preview about what that document is, which is kind of cool. And then also from the build last week, Microsoft has changed how the notification indicator, I guess, on the taskbar. Right now, if you're on a shipping build, it's a number, right? If you haven't got any notifications in there, it just says 0, and then it counts up depending on how many notifications you've missed. Starting with the build from last week, 23.5.11, that has changed. It's no longer showing you a number, it shows you a bell icon. If you have notifications, the bell icon will be lit up. If you don't have any notifications, the bell icon won't be lit up, and it's as simple as that. They've basically taken away the indicator, or rather the counter, and it's just giving you a sort of generic, hey, there's one or many notifications in here, please click to see more. So simplifying that little tiny interface down there, which is nice to see. And that's basically all the big stuff for last week's build. This week's build, 23516. Both of these are dev channel builds, by the way. They've updated the screencasting experience, including a more streamlined way of setting up your PC as a casting device, which is kind of cool. Voice access is now available in more areas of the system, including the login screen, which is pretty cool. Let's see here. Presence sensing settings have been updated once again, and you can now also set up presence sensing settings or privacy settings in the out-of-box experience. So you'll get that option if you're using a device with presence sensors. Not every
That's
device.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, and obviously that's the sort of stuff that powers things like Wake on Approach, which some devices now have. I think a lot of enterprise devices now have them. I'm not
Yeah,
really
right now you see it. It's only, I've said this before, it's only Intel devices I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen AMD get in on this action. And same with ARM devices. But you see, yeah, you're right, primarily enterprise devices. Although Lenovo has been pretty aggressive with it, putting it into a lot more. So I think the Yoga 9i 2-in-1, I believe, has it in there. So Lenovo has really been aggressive with using it, and Dell's been like on board as well.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's cool because the reason it's important to have that out-of-box experience is because right now it's primarily up to those OEMs to highlight that feature, and then they put it into one of their configuration apps where you turn it on and off. Like if for Lenovo, it's in their Vantage app, but you have to there's no notification about it. So you don't know about it unless you go digging into the settings. You're like, oh, that's a feature, and then you enable it. Having an out-of-box experience, they can at least then tell you, hey, your laptop has this new cool thing. You turn it on and do it. So I think that's a really good way to increase adoption.
Absolutely, yeah. So you'll now get presented with the options for that when you're setting up a PC, which is nice. And then they've also updated the Teams chat interface. So if you cast our minds back a bit, remember we were talking about how Microsoft looks to be removing the Teams chat icon from Windows 11. They're not removing Teams chat itself. That's still going to be part of Windows, but it's no longer going to be like a system icon on the desk on the taskbar. But Microsoft is sort of re-adding that sort of flyout. It's no longer a system flyout, but if you click on the Teams chat icon that you've manually pinned yourself, you will get a similar looking interface now. It is a bit different. It looks a little bit nicer in my opinion, but it's no longer hooked into the system. It is just the Teams app just operating in a tiny window that you can move around, and then full screen if you want to have the full Teams chat experience. So I guess that's kind of nice. The beta channel this week also got a bunch of stuff, mostly just stuff being backported from the dev channel, but the most important one being here, beta channel finally got access to copilots, so that more or less confirms that it will be part of the 23H2 release in the fall, and as well as all the presence sensing settings and all the other stuff we just talked about. So the 23H2 release is sort of being shaped up at this point. I think we've only got a couple more weeks left, maybe a few more weeks before Microsoft sort of feature completes it, says, hey, this is basically what will ship. So yeah, next few weeks, I think we're just going to see everything from dev channel be ported back to beta channel for the 23H2 release. But that is basically all of the news for the week in regards to the insider builds. I can't remember, Dan, do you run the beta channel, or are you still on release preview?
I have not tried any of these. I've just been using release preview, which is kind of a shame because I'm going through these features, and I have to admit, like, this actually looks like a pretty cool update. It's not like a ton of overwhelming like major features, but there's a lot of cool small things. Like the RGB lighting stuff is really kind of cool.
Yes.
Actually, it makes you wonder, will Surface ever use RGB lighting? My guess is no.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of cool. So yeah, for those who don't know, the dynamic lighting is a feature we've known about basically right now, and it's a bugaboo of mine. I don't like this either. What's like I use a lot of Razer products. I think they're fantastic. I use their keyboard, I use their mouse, I have their speakers, and they all have, of course, RGB lighting, which is the appeal to it. And they have all these different zones, and you can really go through and configure them quite extensively. The problem is you have to install Razer Synapse, and Synapse is a big hulking program. Uses a little bit more RAM than I would care for, and it's just large in size. And I've had some issues with it. It seems to have stabilized recently in a couple of weeks, but it's just one of those big apps, even though they revamped it a couple of years ago. But now Microsoft is building the ability to control these products directly into Windows. Obviously, I imagine you're going to lack some customizability or some special features possibly. Like, for instance, Razer gives you a lot of presets for like breathing and fire and all this kind of stuff, or you can customize it. But it still allows you to do that. And this week, I guess it came out that they're going to allow your RGB devices to automatically sync to the color theme that you choose in Windows, the accent color. And I think that's pretty cool, actually. I mean, it seems like Windows, of course they should do that, but I hadn't really thought about it. And I'm actually kind of looking forward to that one.
Yeah, what's really nice about that is Windows already supports the ability to set your accent color to match your wallpaper. And if you have a moving set of wallpapers or like a slideshow wallpaper set, and you go through a bunch of different ones every day, your accent will change. And if it's paired to the dynamic lighting stuff, the keys will change at the same time as your wallpaper now. So that's also a nice addition to that as well. But real quick, just looking at the interface you were talking about there, Dan, the built-in Windows dynamic stuff has right now at least the options for a solid color, which makes sense. There's a breathing option, a rainbow option, wave option, wheel option, and gradient option. Basic, I think there'll be like basic alternatives to what the actual third-party alternatives provide. But I think for most people, this will be more than enough. Like, it will be more than enough for me. Sadly, it doesn't work with every RGB device. I tried it with a Keychron K2 recently, and I think that device is a bit too dumb for it to work, because you can control the different RGB lights on the device itself just by pressing like function key and a button, but there's never been any software for it, even through Keychron, to my knowledge. So Windows doesn't pick it up either. But with Razer, since it's a lot more advanced, I think Windows is able to see it and at least try to program it that way. So your results will vary on which peripherals it supports. Right now, it's mostly Razer stuff and maybe some other sort of high-end gamer peripheral things like from Corsair or whoever else makes gamer stuff. I don't know.
I got Corsair stuff in my desktop right here. All the fans and the cooler are Corsair, and that has their what's called ICU is their software, which allows you to sync everything together. So my CPU cooler is synced to my fans, which is synced to more fans. And synced to my RAM, of course. My RAM needs to glow with RGB because of course it does. The downside about this is when my computer goes to sleep, it's in sleep mode. So technically there's still some power on there. And where some of that power, it goes to RAM, because that's where a lot of it's switching over to RAM
Yeah.
basically to do like an image, right? So my RAM stays glowing the whole night, and it's pretty bright because it's across from our bedroom, and so I have to I put a shirt over my computer at night, otherwise the light kind of shines, and it's just like it's a little bit of annoying. So not everything is perfect with RGB, but yeah, if you ever wanted to make RGB RAM, there is something to consider there that it will stay on all the time unless you turn
Yeah.
off the computer.
You should
So.
get some non-light up RAM. That'll solve your problem.
But then my RAM won't match my fans. Yeah, it's all ridiculous. I mean, but that's what makes this stuff fun, right? And
Yeah.
I know some people are not into this stuff, but I've said this for years when it comes to the economy not doing well and the PC market lagging. The one area that doesn't lag is PC gaming. It's the one where no matter how much Razer keeps putting out stuff because gamers will keep buying it regardless of the economy, and it keeps growing and growing every year. So clearly, a lot of people are into it. It's also the thing that has kind of saved the PC industry, right? I mean, sure, we all need laptops for work and school and stuff like that, but it's PC gaming that's really been the bedrock of the entire Windows ecosystem for the last couple of years, in conjunction with enterprise use, of course, which is a big thing. But PC gaming, the margins on it, it's pretty impressive because they sell a lot. And you have the
Yeah.
Nvidia, of course. They're doing very well. So anyway,
So
that's
yeah,
all cool though.
yeah, that is cool. Real quick, I just wanted to also talk about the tool news that came up this week. So this was quite
Yep.
interesting because we know how Windows is sort of built and tested these days. Microsoft loves A/B testing. Basically, every new feature that shows up in the insider program these days is always at first only for a subset of insiders. There's an A group and a B group, and most people are usually in the group that don't have the new feature, and people are always complaining, myself included. It is really the least fun OS preview program out there, because I don't think Android and iOS or Mac OS do this. You download the preview, you get the stuff that was detailed in the preview. Microsoft, on the other hand, it's a 50-50 game. You might get it, you might not get it, and most of the time people don't get it. And Microsoft says that this is, they've done research into this, and for scientific purposes or reasons, it's beneficial to Windows development. It makes Windows a better product overall, according to Microsoft and employees who have sort of argued on Twitter about why this method is better. I disagree with all of them wholeheartedly. I don't care how much money Microsoft put into that research. They're wrong, okay? But it doesn't matter because now there's a tool from Microsoft that allows you to bypass the A/B test. Now, this isn't groundbreaking stuff. There's been third-party tools that could also do this, but the tool Microsoft used internally for this has leaked by Microsoft. I don't think they meant to do this, but this week there's been a bug bash thing going on where, they do bug bashes every now and then. It's basically when Microsoft says, hey, insiders, here's a bunch of tasks. Please complete them and submit feedback. We need to see if they're working as intended. And in some of the quests, were intended for internal sort of employees only. And in those tests, it was like, hey, we need you to test this feature. If you don't have access to the feature because we're doing stupid A/B testing, there's a tool here that we built that allows you to turn it on. And turns out that tool was in a public sort of area, so anyone who saw that quest, regardless of if it was internal or not, could to download the tool. And now the tool has leaked. The tool is called Staging Tool, and Microsoft has been using it for many years at this point to bypass these sort of A/B tests and enable hidden Windows features, essentially. And that makes sense. If you're an engineer working on Windows, you kind of need access to the feature if you're going to test it and build upon it and this, that, and the other. So not a surprise that a tool like this does exist. It's just probably a little bit bad news that it leaked externally, because now insiders can use it to enable new features when they don't have access to them. So good news for us, bad news for Microsoft. But again, this isn't breaking, this isn't a new thing, because there's been third-party tools such as Vive Tool and Mac 2, which have been doing this for a while. Rafael Rivera on Twitter, every week he goes through and he sort of looks at the builds and pulls all the feature IDs from them, which you can then go to GitHub and take a look at all the new feature IDs, and then you can now use this first-party tool, Staging Tool, with those IDs to enable and disable features. And I guess maybe it works a little bit more reliably because it's using, air quotes, an official method for enabling these features. Of course, things like Vive Tool and stuff were, I assume, using a reverse engineered method. I don't know exactly how they were doing it, but this one is, I guess, you're doing it officially, so it should be more stable as a result. I don't know if that's actually going to be true, but haha, Microsoft, you leaked a tool and now we can all use it, and that's going to be great news for us and bad news for you.
Yeah, I feel bad. mostly because a lot of people in the Insider channel are already sort of advanced users,
Yeah,
right? I mean, there's not a lot of regular normie people using it. So those are the kind of people who will know where to go seek out this tool and how to use it. And oh, it's a command line interface, not a problem, you know. So it's like it's going to really kind of affect, I think, the the hardcore users who are already pretty hardcore. But hopefully it doesn't skew the data too much. But I can understand why people would be excited over this. After all, yeah, a lot of us just want to try the new features, and Microsoft is in a position of like, yeah, we want new features too, but we want to make sure that people use and like them.
yeah.
And this is how we test for that. So it's yeah, someone's going to get fired or yelled at,
Yeah.
written up. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Real quick, I just also want to mention this just sort of went live as we were talking. There's a new Canary channel build, 25921. Nothing new in it, really, that we haven't talked about. Although there is one thing I did miss that's also in the dev channel as of this week, HDR background support. Now, this may come as a surprise. It came as a surprise to me, but it actually turns out Windows didn't support HDR wallpapers. Even if you're using Windows on a HDR device and you have HDR switched on and it's displaying Windows correctly in HDR, your wallpaper never was, apparently, up until these builds, preview builds this week. Now, if you were to download a HDR image like a .jxr file and you set it as your desktop background, Windows will correctly display it now. So that's really nice. If you have a HDR monitor or HDR laptop or something or tablet, that's going to be really cool. So you'll get those
That's
high dynamic ranges in your wallpapers now.
yeah, that's been an issue. I kind of meant to write on it years ago, but it's just one of those things. I don't think a lot of people notice because HDR monitors aren't that popular. Or the issue here is what I mean. It's HDR on your TV. You know what it is. Like you turn it on, you get this like super contrast, and like the whites are just blinding. The blacks are just completely absent of light, especially if you're using like an AMOLED TV. And it gives you that really strong effect, and that's what makes it so great. The weird thing that's always been with Windows, and this goes back to with Windows 10 when it got HDR, is you'd have an HDR compliant monitor, which itself was pretty rare. Most monitors weren't. You could do this like video streaming HDR, but it wasn't the same. You could actually run all of Windows and apps in HDR 10. You would turn it on, and I swear to God, 9 times out of 10, it looked like your screen was washed out. Like it was the exact opposite effect. It wasn't this like deep contrasty experience you kind of thought it would be. And I never understood that. And I'm thinking that this will finally kind of address that. I'm not 100% sure, but even with that, going back to Lenovo Yoga 9i, the 2-in-1, that has an HDR mode as well. Although interestingly, I think you can set it, I think it can only run like on battery power. And so you would switch it between, but it looks better on the Lenovo one. That has a better instantiation of it. But it's always been just quirky to use versus like watching a movie or video in HDR, which is the typical experience.
Yeah. So that's all of the Windows news this week. We can probably now move on to Surface news. Bad Surface news, unfortunately. We are hearing that the ARM Surface Go, which we had talked about in the past and was supposed to come this fall. It was codenamed Tanta and was going to be powered by a Qualcomm 7C based chip, likely a slightly customized version with Microsoft branding, as is usually the case with Microsoft. That device is no longer coming this year. I hear it's been postponed, which means it might show up next year. I mean, I don't think it has a set date anymore, and I think there's a few reasons for this. I think the first one being the Surface Go is hugely popular with commercial markets. In fact, I think it's Microsoft's most popular commercial product outside of software and stuff, of course. In regards to hardware, commercial customers love the Surface Go, and I think they sell hundreds of thousands of units quite often to enterprises or commercial establishments who are looking to buy Surface Go's. And I get the impression that commercial customers aren't really all that keen on Windows and ARM, at least not yet. And at least not at the low end of the 7C based stuff. The 7C chips aren't very powerful, and emulating apps on them isn't a great experience. You know what enterprises are like. Of all the people in the world, enterprises are usually the last to adopt new technologies, and so asking enterprises to compile their apps for ARM is a big ask. And so that paired with the fact that this year's been kind of bad for Surface and all of Microsoft's divisions, where they've sort of been told to only focus on things that are guaranteed to make money or cut costs where you can, is another thing I've heard quite a lot happening this year internally at Microsoft. I think for Surface, the decision to axe the ARM version makes sense from a business standpoint, because the ARM version would be the version that sells the least. Microsoft has the data on the Pro 9, for example. They know how many Surface Pro 9 5Gs they've sold compared to Surface Pro 9 Intels. And I wouldn't be surprised if the number of Intel units they've sold is much higher than the amount of ARM versions they've sold. And the same would be for the Surface Go. So it's extra money they've got to pump out for marketing and support and, stock for something that a lot of people probably wouldn't buy. And so as a result of that, they've basically just said, all right, fine, we won't do the ARM version. We're just going to go ahead with an Intel refresh this fall. So I'm hearing this device will be powered by an Intel N200 chip, which is not a terrible chip. I mean, it is an entry-level mobile chip from Intel, so, not terrible within the realm of reality of that low end. But it is better than what Surface Go's had prior. The Intel Pentiums and the Core i3, the 10th gen that the Go 3 has. I believe the Intel N200 is quite significantly better than those. So it'll be more powerful and more efficient than those older Intel chips, which is good to see, and kind of exactly what the Surface Go needs. So it should be more powerful, should be more capable, and it should have slightly longer battery life because of that more efficient chip. Now, it's not as efficient as an ARM chip, but it is still better than what the current Surface Go has. So yeah, the other stuff I've heard about the Surface Go, basically the Go's not going to be a major update this year. It's more or less going to look exactly the same as the Surface Go 3. The only big sort of design changes happening inside the device. The Surface Go, I believe we've talked about this before, but the Surface Go is really the last Surface PC that still sort of has the old Surface design way of not being repairable. You can't really get into it, and once you do get into it, there's nothing really to upgrade because it's all soldered and glued in and stuff. The last couple of years we've seen things like the Pro 9, the Surface Laptop, the Laptop Studio, the Surface Studio, all come out with redesigned internals that make it more upgradable, with more replaceable components. In fact, a few weeks ago, Microsoft launched its own storefront for Surface PC components, so you can now go and buy individual components for your Surface device to attempt your own repairs. The Surface Go is not a device that you will find on that storefront yet because it's using that older design where basically nothing's upgradable. But I'm told that will change with this upcoming Surface Go. The internal design will be redone, and it will be more upgradable as a result. So that's good news there as well. But otherwise, it will mostly be the same as the Go 3. So kind of disappointing news. I know I was personally looking forward to an ARM Surface Go, but I just don't think the target market for the Surface Go is ready for it yet. And as a result, it doesn't make much sense for Microsoft to push forward with it. They definitely will at some point. I hear that in the next 2 years, Windows and ARM will become basically a normal option for Surface PCs, whether it's a Pro, a laptop, or a Go. You'll be able to configure it with an ARM chip. But I think what Microsoft is waiting for is Nuvia, right? The Orion chips, which are up and coming and are supposed to start shipping in 2024. That will be the big Windows and ARM moment where OEMs, or Microsoft at least, will be more keen to adopt it.
Yeah, there's like three factors here, right? One is you mentioned the 7C's performance. Yeah, I'm not that impressed by the 7C Gen 2. It's fine. Don't get me wrong. I've used it. It's fine, but it's not like that big of a deal in terms of comparatively where things are at with Intel right now. Even battery life, would be better, but I'm not sure it would be that much. So there's that factor. There's the factor that the current PC market is about minus 20%, right? It's just consumers aren't really buying laptops. A lot of these companies have an excess of inventory that they're burning through. So it's not really a great time to release a PC, and Microsoft's in that position where they don't need to release it. They're not a PC company, as in that their main business is making laptops, right? If you are HP, HP rarely, or Lenovo would rarely go, oh, we're not going to release ThinkPads this year because we haven't done enough of an upgrade for them. Like, that'd be weird, right? So Microsoft can afford to do that. And then, you mentioned with the enterprise, they're really big. The Surface Go surprisingly with enterprise. And so it kind of makes sense, that they would aim something there. You did mention Nuvia, and I want to caution a little bit on Nuvia. Everything I've read about Nuvia is they're supposed to be positioned as like ultra high-end chips. So Core i7. So I don't know if we're going to see like a Nuvia and a Surface Go. we'll find out in October when Snapdragon Qualcomm, unveils and gives us more details about this. What's now called the Onyx chip. Nuvia was just the company that they bought. So maybe we'll learn about more SKUs or kind of price ranges or, their targets. That said, they could still do a new Snapdragon 7C Gen 3, right?
That's what I'm thinking
they could do,
will happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
In which case they may have a significantly more performance boost there while also keeping prices pretty low. So that's going to be, I think, the story to watch. But yeah, I mean, part of me is disappointed in this because, yeah, I would ideally like an ARM-based Surface Go 2, but yeah, it's still a little early for that. And there's just a lot of reasons that they could avoid doing it for right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they thought internally as well. It is a shame. But a couple other things I've heard about this device. I have heard that it will only be sold to commercial markets. Now, I haven't been able to 100% confirm this yet, but I sort of mentioned it in the article that I have heard that, its primary focus will be commercial and education sectors, which isn't a surprise. But that does sound like it's going to sort of ship similarly to how the Surface Pro 7 Plus shipped, being, this weird sort of mid-tier commercial only release that was only available to via commercial channels, and it was called the 7 Plus because it was the Surface Pro 7 just with newer specs and a slightly revised internal hardware design. That sounds an awful lot like this upcoming Surface Go. I wouldn't be surprised if they call it Surface Go 3 Plus because, the Surface Go 4 would have been with the ARM thing and that would have been a much bigger deal, but since that's not coming now, I think they can get away with calling it Go 3 Plus, especially if it is only available via commercial channels. And the other thing I've heard in general, and this does count for this upcoming Surface Go, is that 4 gigabytes of RAM is dead. Microsoft is done with it. To my knowledge, 4 gigabyte RAM options for the upcoming Surfaces are all gone. That includes Laptop Go 3 and Surface Go 4/Go 3 Plus. All of them will start with 8 gigabytes of RAM in the base model, but that does mean increased prices. I don't know what the starting price for this new Surface Go will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's $499. Because the Surface Go 3 is $399, right? 8 gigs of RAM, probably $499, or at least $449. I'm not too sure what that is, but the Surface Laptop Go 3, and I guess this sort of ties us nicely into the next topic, which is what's coming this fall. Surface Laptop Go 3, I've heard, will basically be just like the Surface Laptop Go 2, but with an updated 12th gen Intel chip, and again, an updated internal design that makes more components replaceable, so that's nice to hear. But
12th gen or 13th gen?
12th gen. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's for some reason, the Laptop Go series has always been a generation behind. Even when it launched in 2020 with a 10th gen chip when the 11th gen was out, and then the Go 2 launched with an 11th gen chip when 12th was out. We're doing the same thing here with the Go 3, which will now be 12th gen when 13th/14th is coming out. So yeah, that's run of the mill for Surface Laptop Go. But again, the 4 gigabyte RAM model's dead. It's not coming. So we're going to start with 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gig storage, I believe, and that will be probably $699 or $749. That's not going to be cheap. So these ultra low entry level price points for these Go devices is going away, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I know everybody has always complained that the entry-level models are basically a scam. Don't buy the entry-level models. So maybe this is a good thing. It just means you can no longer market these devices as starting at $399 or starting at $599, which looks good in an advertisement, right, or in a tweet or in a headline. Doesn't look so good when you're looking at it on the store page and it's like, oh, only 4 gigs of RAM, let me upgrade. So maybe this actually is an overall good thing, but I guess we'll wait and see. But that's the lowdown on the Laptop Go 3. I've also heard that it may support things like voice clarity, which is an AI feature in Windows. All of these devices will have some AI tie-in. That's Microsoft's thing this year, isn't it? Everything will have an AI tie-in. So Laptop Go 3, this Intel Surface Go 4/Go 3 Plus, and Surface Laptop Studio 2, as we've talked about in the past, is expected this fall. Those are more or less guaranteed at this point. I don't think those will be changed or cancelled. The two devices I'm not sure about are Laptop 6 and Pro 10. I've heard mixed things, and I continue to hear mixed things about what's going on with those devices. Earlier in the year, yeah, we were getting a Laptop 6 and a Pro 10. Then at some point in late spring, early summer, sources were like, oh, actually, maybe we're not getting that. And then I've heard mixed things about what these products are actually going to be. Will they be new designs? Will they be existing designs of new specs? Like, what's the nature of these devices? And now I'm hearing they might be for commercial customers only, and then they'll launch in December. So I've heard all sorts of things. So I can't tell you right now what the plan is for Surface Laptop 6 and Surface Pro 10 is. I do know that the Laptop 6, or there is a new laptop design internally that they've been testing and are looking to ship at some point. I don't know if it'll be ready in time for this fall, but they do have one. It's basically, if you look at the Laptop Go, they've made a bigger version of that with higher end specs and a better screen and stuff, so that you get the thin bezels on your four sides. I believe they have rounded corners, more ports. I want to say, I think I've got a USB A and 2 USB-C ports, maybe, I can't remember. But yeah, the Laptop 6, or I keep saying 6, a future Surface laptop does have an updated design, which makes it more modern looking, which is nice. The Pro 10 or a new Surface Pro, I think they've got some minor design changes coming, but there's only so much you can do with that design at this point, right? They've already did the big design update in 2021 with the Surface Pro 8. And so from there, I don't really know where you go. Maybe you thin the bezels a bit more. Maybe you add an additional port. I don't know. But yeah, that's the lowdown on what's happening this fall so far. So 3 devices guaranteed. The other 2 still up in the air. Once I have a concrete answer for you, I'll be sure to share it.
Yeah, when it comes to the Surface Pro 10, if you compare it to something like the iPad, which is often the comparison both that Microsoft has made and then Apple has turned their iPad into like a Surface product. If you go by that, the market for those devices has kind of dipped. Like, for instance, Apple just reported its quarterly earnings. iPad is down 20% year over year.
Yeah.
It's just not a device people are really into right now. Laptops, more so, for traditional laptops, because that's what a Mac is. And of course, phones are flat. They were actually down 1% for Apple, but still kind of holding there. And that's what people are primarily using these days. So, I think when it comes to Surface Pro, it's pretty much unmatched. There isn't a lot of competition in that space on the PC side, although we'll be talking about one later on. So it's one of those devices. It's just like, it's great. It's there. I'm not sure it's going many places further right now, just like the iPad has not really done anything interesting in the last couple of years either. The big rumor now is eventually the iPad's going to get this new technology that they're using to thin out the bezels on the Apple Watch that's supposedly coming to the iPhone. So it's like, all right, thinner bezels. Anyone who's followed the PC world knows thinner bezels has always been a thing. It's like every year we get thinner bezels. So I'm not really sure what else to expect on these devices. AMOLED display. I don't think AMOLED displays they're fine. They're nice. Yeah. They're not the be all end all. I don't like, when it comes to choosing a laptop, it doesn't really matter to me if it's AMOLED or not. LCDs, IPS have gotten so good that it's good enough for a lot of things. And I think sometimes it looks better than AMOLED, especially if, Samsung still tunes their own AMOLEDs on their laptops, like to a very high contrast. That's a little bit too intense. You do have mini LED now. I just got a laptop yesterday, Lenovo, that has mini LED. That's kind of cool. Actually, I kind of think that looks better than AMOLED. But I don't think it's very power efficient either. So it's like, kind of a trade-off there.
The one thing I have heard about the next Surface Pro, Dan, that you'll love, anti-reflective coating on the display.
Right.
That is apparently a thing that they are looking at now. So, you might finally get a Surface Pro with an anti-reflective screen. And I believe that's the only complaint you've ever had for the Surface Pros since the Pro 8, right?
I mean, honestly, it's true. Like, I don't know what else you do with a Surface Pro. You make the screen anti-reflective, and that's kind of about it. And put a new processor in, of course. Add some AI trickery in there, maybe the human presence detection. So we're just talking like the frippery, the little minor things to make it better, but aren't like, groundbreaking new things that are going to make people drop their current Surface Pro. The only thing that's going to, I think maybe the big change will be when they do the new Qualcomm Onyx processor and the Surface Pro. That could be really interesting, because now you're talking, you're supposed to get really good performance and fingers crossed,
Yeah.
exceptionally good battery life. And that could be a game changer for them, just kind of like the M1 and M2 chips were for Apple. But even there, well, Apple saw an increase in sales of Macs. It's not like they've blown through the roof and it's just like people who have them love them, but they really hasn't really shifted the market in any substantial way outside of people go, it's a really nice processor.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would love to see Microsoft build a device from the ground up for ARM. You know, like we saw them do it with the Pro X, and I still think the Pro X is the peak of Surface Pro design. The Pro 9 5G is a thicker, heavier version of that. It's an Intel device with a Qualcomm chip in it, ultimately. And I'm not a fan of that. I really don't like that, air quotes, lazy approach. I realize there's probably a lot of work that went into that regardless. But the Pro X, if you take a look at, if you put a Pro X side by side with a Pro 9 5G, it's like they're from different worlds. It's honestly shocking how much lighter and thinner and nicer the Pro X is. And that's because it was built with ARM in mind from the ground up. I would love to see Microsoft do that again. I don't want them to just put Qualcomm chips in existing product lines. I want them to build something new with ARM at the heart of it. I would love to see maybe a Surface, an ultra thin, high end Surface laptop. That's, you know, different with a thinner design. Basically, we've talked about it before, but if you look at the laptop studio, I would love to see a version of this without the weird screen and without the sort of base bit here. Just imagine that part. Sorry, if you're listening to the audio version, you have no idea, but on video, if you just had that part with this silver bit for the screen with an ARM processor, that would be the best device in the world. I'd buy that so quickly. But yeah, they just, for now at least, so far it's been just recycling.
And they're getting there. So the device I got with the mini LED in yesterday was the Lenovo 9i Slim Pro. And it's kind of like an updated series. It's a 14-inch mini LED display. I think it's a 14.5-inch display. And it packs a 4050 GPU in it and an H series Core i7. So it's pretty serious specs. Battery life doesn't seem to be amazing on it though, right? But when you look at the size of the device and how curved and thin it is, it's kind of remarkable that they fit that much technology into that much power into such a device with such a strong GPU. So it's kind of amazing like how thin these things are getting. I have the new Samsung Tablet Ultra. I forgot what it's called, the S9, I think it is, the S9 Ultra. Pretty much a useless device. But the hardware is immaculate. And, you know, that's just Samsung, but it's also stupid thin. When you pull it out of the box, it's just like, holy cow, this thing is like razor thin. And because, it's an ARM-based device, but it's running, I don't know what it's running. I guess it's running Android. I haven't turned it on yet. But it's like you can get a keyboard for it and stuff, but it's like the problem with that device is the operating system's very limited to what people expect from that kind of level quality and performance of that hardware. But eventually Windows, I think, is kind of getting there, right? That's where we're leading to. But yeah, right now in the PC industry, I would say, you know, and the other thing is, and I've said this before, Surface was always meant to sort of be the tip of the spear for the PC industry, you know, setting the bar, setting the standard. Come at me with like how Lenovo, HP, and Dell aren't doing that right now. I would argue most of those are better than Surface, partly because their business is making PCs. That's what they do full time. That is their main business. That's not Microsoft's main business. It's a small little division side project that they do. It's called Surface. But look at the innovations going on with HP, Dell, Lenovo, Razer. You know, Razer's new 16-inch laptop with a mini LED that switches between 2 resolutions and 2 refresh rates, so you can get the best of a 4K world as well as a 360 hertz refresh display. You know, they're doing that work and leading, which is what's helping the PC industry, because as good as Surface always was, and you can pick whatever best year you thought they had, maybe 2015, it still didn't do anything significantly in the PC market in terms of market share. No, I mean, it's always been like, we don't even know, maybe 1 or 2%. But now if you look at 2023, if I had to recommend a laptop to you, no, I'd be like the Yoga 9i from Lenovo is amazing. HP Spectre 13.5 is amazing. Dell's XPS 13, maybe the 13 plus if you're looking or is it the Pro? I forgot how they call it. The with its new innovative design is great. I use the Dragonfly as my personal laptop as much as I can when I travel. These are the really exciting devices, which begs the question, like, how important is Surface then? Who kind of cares what happens to it? And that's not to say like it's not fun to cover, or we hope they don't do cool stuff, because I'm sure they will. They'll eventually do maybe a new form factor, but I don't see them as critical to the PC industry because I don't see the PC industry. I mean, look what Lenovo's doing with like foldables and like dual
Yeah.
screen devices, right? Like, who's the more interesting company right now? Uh, so I kind of don't care what happens with Surface. I mean, I
Yeah.
want them to stick
It's
around,
just,
but
it's
they're not as critical as people think they
you
are.
know, it's crazy. I've had the same thought in the last year. If you asked me a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would have been like, I'm a diehard Surface fan. You wouldn't see me
Yeah,
using any other OEM. But I'm literally hosting this podcast on a HP all-in-one now. I'm about to switch
yeah.
away from the Duo 2 to something else. I am my next laptop probably won't even be a Surface device. I like the Dell XPSs are looking great. Um, that is wild to me that I'm now in that position. But I think something has happened internally at Microsoft where they've sort of lost their mojo regarding Surface.
Mhm.
And honestly, maybe we can tie it back to Panos Panay taking over Windows. That guy's probably quite busy at Microsoft, and I can't imagine he's got all the time in the world now to focus on these sort of passion projects he had at Surface. The reason devices like the Duo even made it out the door is because they had Panos batting for them, right? Like, these were his visions. He wanted to do these. He fought hard for these to ship. The Duo, by all accounts, we know its story, its history, should never have shipped. It's a product that should have just died in the labs internally at Microsoft. But I think he got out the door because Panos was pushing for it. But now Panos is busy dealing with Windows, and he has to talk with OEMs 24/7, and he's probably hasn't got as much time to bat for Surface now. And I think we've seen Surface suffer as a result. I'd say the last 3 years of Surface have been significantly more boring and less innovative than the prior 3 years before that, from like 2017 to 2019, or even 5 years, 2015 to 2019, 4 years. That was peak Surface. That was when they were trying new things, new form factors, new designs, refreshes consistently. It was great. Obviously, we start there with 2015 with the Surface Book, and then we move on to Surface Laptop, Surface Studio, and then we end with Surface Duo and Surface Neo. That was 4 years of awesome product design and just great stuff from Surface. And then the next 4 years have been what? Refreshes. Oh, laptop go, that's nice. Refreshes. Oh, laptop studio, that's nice, and that's it. And I wouldn't even call the laptop Go a new form factor. That's just a
No,
cheaper Surface laptop. And the laptop studio, I
it's
guess
smaller.
there's an argument as to that being like a pinnacle design, and sure, but it's really just an answer to a broken design that was the Surface Book.
True.
It's not that there's no real innovation. And again, this is a form factor that hasn't really taken off. I don't think there's any other OEMs that have really adopted this sort of pull forward screen design. They've just opted for normal laptops or detachables or two-in-ones. They're not doing this weird hinge thing that the Surface Laptop Studio does. So what happened? I think it's Panos. I think Panos moving on to Windows has caused Surface to sort of fall away from its visionary a little bit, I guess. I don't know. Like, what do you think?
No, I think you're right. I mean, part of it's also, I think they might have spread themselves a little bit too thin. Their
Yeah.
portfolio really did expand, right? It was originally just Surface Pro, and it was kind of weird when they did Surface Laptop, right? A lot of people are like, "Why are you doing
It's a nice
laptop?"
laptop.
Even their OEM partners were like, "Why are you doing a laptop?"
Yeah.
It's like it's strange, and you can argue that they're maybe stretching themselves too thin into areas where they're not necessarily needed. Like, I would argue, as nice as Surface Laptop is, and it is good because it does things like it doesn't have bottom intake ventilation, it doesn't have visible speaker grills. Uh, the way it feels and everything like that is very unique. But is it a necessary device to have on the PC market these days? I don't think so. Like, if
Mm.
it disappeared tomorrow, I'd be kind of sad, but it's like there's so many other good options out there that people could buy worldwide. Don't forget, Surface has always been limited by geography. Yeah, they've expanded to more markets, but they're not in stores as much. They're not as online as much as, like, when HP or Lenovo or Dell ships a laptop, they're like, bam, global. Every single market it's going to be in. You're in Malaysia, you're in Singapore, you're in Hong Kong, you're in France. It doesn't matter. You'll be able to get these devices. Um, Surface has always had that trouble doing that. So yeah, I think they spread themselves a little bit too thin. I think eventually you start running into corners with innovation in PCs, right? There's only so much you can do. Lenovo's been picking up the slack there. It's like, oh, they canceled Surface Neo, boo-hoo. It's like, well, go buy the new Lenovo dual screen laptop. It's way better than what Microsoft had done. So it's like, there are other alternatives out there. But yeah, Surface was always meant to just be, that flagship device in terms of design. But I'm not sure they're needed as much anymore. And they've
Yeah.
always been a small team. They maybe have not grown as much as their ambitions have been. I'm sure, don't forget the people who are on the Surface team want to be a bigger group, right? Microsoft as a whole, as a company, though, has a different feeling about it
Yeah.
because they're technically not a laptop company or a PC company. So,
See
which is why we
that
haven't really seen them go into the desktop space, right?
yeah.
Besides the studio.
That's a hard lesson I've had to learn because obviously I've had the privilege of chatting with people at Microsoft who may or may not work on Surface or be familiar with projects happening in the Surface team, and it's one thing that the Surface team is working on stuff. It's another thing that it ships, right? Just because Surface wants to do this, that, and the other doesn't mean it's going to ship as a product because it's not just Surface that gets to decide what to do. They've got to pitch it to higher ups. They've got to tell you why there's a business reason for it to be a thing that we ship, who we will sell it to, how much money they think it will make. And that's why a lot of things don't ship. Surface has things like desktops. They have things like monitors. They have things like headphones and phones, normal phones, foldable phones, you name it, that they've prototyped and built internally that I've heard about / seen sometimes. But that doesn't mean they ship, and that doesn't mean they're greenlit products because Surface isn't able to argue a business case for making them. Because Microsoft is always focused on cloud and Azure and making money from businesses and stuff, and hardware isn't a great way to make money. Apparently, it
No,
really isn't.
it's unless you scale up. But like I said, even investors in Microsoft don't care about Surface, right?
No,
They never.
yeah,
If you go onto the investor calls, it never comes up.
no,
Windows Phone used to come up, but I've
sure,
never heard Surface brought up. Investors don't care. It's a tiny portion of the market. But as I've always said, the brand commands higher attention than its actual impact.
yes,
And
that's the
that's
thing.
kind of the point. We're
It
talking a
might
lot about Surface that could, a division that could, like I said, maybe has 1 or 2% of the PC market, which is
Yeah,
pretty absurd.
Microsoft killing Surface would look bad. For whatever reason,
Sure.
I think it would look bad, and it's another one of those things where people would just be like, "Oh, it's another step for Microsoft becoming the next IBM, less consumer focused, this, that, and the other." And so, I hope we don't see Surface die. I wouldn't be against them reducing the lineup and only focusing on premium high end stuff. I know like the Go is their super popular device stuff, but I would love it if they just reduce the line, get rid of the Surface Studio. That's a cool idea, but it's too expensive. It doesn't make sense. I think if they refine the line to Surface Pro, Surface Laptop, Surface Go, and then the Go can have the Laptop Go, that should be a sort of sub brand. I think that's okay with me. I think, it would be nice to have headphones and peripherals and stuff, but I don't think they're necessary. The Surface headphones were nice, but they weren't groundbreaking. I don't think they ever did sell well
Right.
for Microsoft. The accessories line can die, other than obviously keyboards and stuff for the Pro line and whatnot. But if we just did that, and I guess Laptop Studio could also be there. We can have a high-end laptop and a mainstream laptop. We can have a Surface Pro, two sizes, 13-inch and 11-inch. Then we can have the Go series, which is Surface Go and Surface Laptop Go. That's all that Surface needs to be, really, I think. And maybe that would allow them to sort of focus more on stuff, because obviously they have, if they only have a limited amount of resources, less product lines means more focus on those products, right? So maybe they could do that. I just don't want to see them kill
I
it
mean,
because, that'd be
yeah,
sad.
even just going by the stocks today, right? So I'm looking at stock market, Microsoft, $332 a share,
Yeah.
Apple, $185 a share, right? It's a significant difference. Microsoft up 5.81%, Apple down 6%. That's after Apple's stock kind of cratered a bit comparatively. I mean, they're not year over year; they're still really good, but it took a big dip after their quarterly earnings, which goes to show. And I've actually said that I think their quarterly earnings were actually pretty positive, but clearly the stock market demands a lot of Apple, and expects them to always perform. Even though I think where they're at right now, I think they did pretty well, especially with their services. But Microsoft is actually doing better than Apple is right now in terms of stock. So I don't think, none of this stuff actually matters. But we're spending a lot of time talking about it. So there you go.
Well, that's the impact of consumer brand awareness. I think it's just
Yeah.
we have attachments to the more air quotes fun parts of Microsoft. Make sure the fun parts don't seem to be making the money. Didn't Xbox even say in their FTC hearings recently that we wish we were making more money. When internally
Yeah.
we don't look that great compared to other Microsoft businesses. Everything Microsoft does in consumer just seems to not make money. I don't know why they can't nail consumers or consumer businesses like they can enterprise. It just bewilders me.
Adrian has a comment which I think is a fundamental misunderstanding. He says, honestly, what Microsoft should do, stop trying to make money with Surface. Surface should be an investment to inspire OEMs. As long as it breaks even, it's fine. Adrian, we have absolutely no data, and I've said this repeatedly on this podcast, no data, no inclination if Surface has even ever turned a profit. None. We don't know if it's ever turned a profit, let alone are they like making a lot of money. I know it makes it sound like you're making it sound like that they're making hand and fist over Surface. I don't think they are. Um, at best, they may be breaking even because of all the research that goes into designing these and how small their team is, and the numbers that they ship, and in some cases having excess inventory. There is absolutely no indication that they are making money off of Surface. None. And they've never said that publicly. They've only mentioned, um, you know, how much money they make overall on Surface, the revenue. But revenue is not profit. Those are two very different things. And so that's I would not make that assumption that they're charging that much precisely to inspire OEMs. Like, I don't understand your logic here. If they made their devices cheaper, HP and Dell, Lenovo are just going to get more upset because then they're going to have to compete harder at pricing as well, which means they cut their profit margins, which does not make anyone happy. One of the benefits of being HP, Lenovo, and Dell, and even Razer, is like you can be like, yeah, you can get a Surface Pro or a Surface laptop, but you can get like a Lenovo for $300 cheaper and you can get more out of it. That is the argument. If Microsoft made their stuff more affordable, it would decimate their own partners, which is not what we want. So I feel your whole statement is just a complete misunderstanding and misreading of the market.
Yeah. Surface is dead, everyone.
Oh, well.
Yes. Right, we just need to move on, but I have accidentally closed the ad read that I need to read, so give me 1 sec to find it again. This episode of the Windows Central podcast is sponsored by Indeed once again. Thank you, Indeed, for sponsoring. What's a game where no one wins? Of course, it's the waiting game. When it comes to hiring, don't wait for great talent to find you. You can find them first with Indeed. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that find you matched candidates, and with Instant Match, over 80% of employers can get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed. One of the things we think is pretty awesome about Indeed is that candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search. And it gets you 1 step closer to the hire by immediately matching you with quality candidates. So join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/WCP. Offer is good for a limited time only. That's a $75 credit. $75 credit now at Indeed.com/WCP. Just go to Indeed.com/WCP and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/WCP. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thank you, Indeed. And now back to the conversation at hand, which we're moving on to Galaxy Fold territory, are we not?
Yes. Samsung announced the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Z Fold 5. I have both here right now. I have the Fold with the cool new pen case, which is really nice. Although I'm almost tempted to take it off and get a D brand leather back for it because it would look so good with that. And Samsung caught a little bit of flack for these devices because sort of what we're just talking about with Microsoft and Surface, the improvements this year are not page turning, right? Even this is like Apple territory, right? In fact, Mark Gurman from Bloomberg said that. He said Samsung is stealing Apple's approach here to
Yeah.
phones and basically made S versions of these devices, um, borrowing from what Apple does. And I kind of concede that, but I will also say the changes that they made are pretty significant, or at least altered my appreciation of these devices. I'm going to start with the Fold because I think it's kind of more interesting of the devices, and it's the one I was most skeptical of. So I did buy the Z Fold last year, um, and returned it uh, because one, it was really thick. Um, and part of that's because it's a wedge shape, right? So that part by the hinge is pretty wide and it slopes down. And it always felt kind of strange to hold because of that. This year, the big thing is it folds completely flat. Now, Chinese companies have been doing this for over a year now, so it's not new in that sense, but it's new for Samsung. It has definitely changed my appreciation of this device because it feels now like a solid candy bar phone, right? Because there's no gap, there's no angle to it. It's just a flat device, and it just feels more normal. It feels kind of like when you would have a slab phone back in the day, but you would put a big battery pack on the back.
Right.
It feels a little bit like that, where the heft of it. So it's definitely not light, but they I do believe made it a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter overall. So that's a big thing. It also the hinge is completely new, and I like this hinge. It does. I don't feel like I'm prying it open as much as I did on the four, which was another complaint I had. This feels a little bit more natural for me to open up and close, just the way the motion of the hinges. So that's really good. The big thing I really like is this pen case, which I'll hold up to the camera, though. I don't know if you guys can see it. So another complaint I had was it was neat that the Fold 4 had an optional S Pen that you can get with it, but the problem was it was a full-sized round pen. And then they made a case for that would you put the pen in. And it was kind of cool because you can carry it all together. But holy cow, between that pen was like where the hinge gets fat, it just made the device really, really thick. And not to mention when you placed it on the table, it really wobbled, right? It was just and it just made carrying the pen kind of like, do I really want to do this? You could remove the pen holster though and put a kickstand in there, which was kind of cool. But it was one of those you had to choose. Do you really need the pen? And I feel like a lot of people with the Fold, there'll be definitely some people who use the pen all the time, right? They're drawing and all that kind of stuff. But I think for a lot of people, they want the pen, but they don't want the downsides of carrying the pen, which is size and bulk and making it thicker and all this kind of stuff. And so Samsung solved that problem this year. What they did was, well, first of all, the phone now completely is flat. It's uniform on all sides, but the pen itself is flat. And you do this like you push this little button and the pen just pops out. And it's not it's a flat pen, but it has like depth to it. It's not like a paper read or something like that. So it's a smaller pen, less substantial, but it's not as bad as the like the S9 and the old Notes where it was a toothpick that kind of came
Yeah.
out, right? That's what it felt like, a toothpick. This doesn't feel like this. This actually has edges to it and actually feels a lot better. Um, and so now I can carry the pen without feeling like I'm sacrificing much, right? When you put this case on, because this case isn't that much thicker. Plus, you get some protection with it and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that really sort of changed the experience. Now I don't mind carrying the pen around. I like the hinge. I like the way it opens, um, the way it loads flat. Other than that, they have improved the software a little bit in terms of multitasking now. I've been doing the app pairs, which is kind of cool. So I can open two things. I have like my Google my Google email and calendar open at the same time, but I've resized it so that the Gmail takes up probably about 70% of the screen and the calendar takes up 30% because that's all I need to see. Um, and the benefit that they pointed out with the outer display. So the other complaint is that this phone is very narrow, and it is narrow. I would say it's. I wouldn't mind it being a little bit wider, but I don't find it too narrow to use. I've been typing on it just fine. But the real benefit that they pointed out, and I have to agree with, and this is something I did with the Fold 5, I didn't do with the Fold 4, was I traveled with this device. So one of the reasons why they went with this design is because when it's closed, you can completely use it one-handed. And that's completely true. When I was going to the airport, dragging my luggage, I was able to use this device completely one-handed, typing, bringing up applications and all that. And it's something I haven't been able to do with a lot of smartphones in recent years, right? Because they've gotten so wide and so large. You generally have to stop and use two hands to do stuff, especially sometimes you just need a hand just to hold it so you can reach up to the top of the screen to pull a notification or something. In that one-handedness, I've been making a lot of use of. So I've been using the outer display quite a lot. I just use this mostly as a normal phone most of the time, which is what I think they intended. And then when I'm home or relaxed or want to do multitasking, I open it up and I get that larger tablet display. Battery life has been good too because they upgraded the CPU to the Gen 2. And I know to a lot of people that sounds like a minor thing, but it's been kind of well established. And I can verify that the efficiency of Gen 2 is way better than the first gen. I saw this on the S23 Ultra, which gets insane battery life. But I usually finish the day up with around 50% battery life on this thing, which I consider to be pretty good because I may not be as hardcore user as some, but I use the camera a lot. I've been opening it, all that kind of stuff. So that gave me plenty of reserve. I never had battery anxiety using the Fold yet, and it's been really good. I even liked it better than the Flip. I did make an Instagram saying, oh, I'm going to switch to the Flip now, now that I'm home. And I love the Flip, but I put the SIM back into the Fold like a couple hours later. I just like the Fold a lot. So I actually really, really like it. The thing is with this device, and it's going to be kind of the heart of my review, is it's a, these are minor upgrades, but it's a very established device. This is the 5th gen now, right? So they've really kind of honed in how people are using it and stuff. There's still things I wish were better. I wish the cameras were better. They're fine, but after using the S23 Ultra, it's kind of night and day, or even a Pixel, right? This is where I would say the Google Pixel Fold has a leg up. Its cameras are really good. It's really hard to get one of those devices, and it's pretty expensive. But the cameras are good. The displays have been fantastic. I just love the new pen thing, right? That all this has just kind of changed my appreciation of it, which is why I've been sticking with it. And I like the dual functionality. Turning to the Flip's big thing was, of course, they got a new processor, so it's supposed to get better battery life as well. But it's the outer cover display got much larger, and now you can basically do anything you want on the display. It's not quite as open as the Motorola Razr, where you can just run every single app, but you can run a lot of apps on it, including your messaging ones. But it acts as it's big enough now where it acts as its own separate phone in a lot of ways. In other words, you can pull the Flip out of your pocket and just keep it closed, check your notifications, check your weather, check your calendar, turn on and off features, right, that are running, launch maybe a couple of apps here and there. You can do all that now without opening it, which is something you've never really been able to do with the Flip. And that, again, changes the experience because one of the things with the Flip is that you do need like the two hands, of course, to pry it open and use it as a phone. And that was kind of the downside with the Flip for a couple of years. You always had to pry it open to use it, right? The outer display was literally just to be like, oh, it's a notification. There it is. There's the time. Now you can leave this thing closed a lot. Even for taking photos, it works really good, especially like selfies, which is what they were promoting. And I like the new design too. It's the original Flips were very curved and slippery.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was going to drop it. They've now squared it off significantly, and especially now that it closes again without the gap, it's just a completely flat device. Here, I'll bring it up here as I'm talking about it. I mean, it is just really kind of cool. And when it opens up, it's a very thin phone. Great speakers. The cameras are okay on it, but choosing between these two is really hard. Don't get me wrong. When I'm sitting on the couch, I'm playing with both. I'm immediately like in love with the Flip. I think the Flip is like, it's really awesome. And if the Fold didn't exist, I'd totally be using the Flip. And now who knows? I might actually, Michael Fisher, aka Mr. Mobile, he has both. And he's been like for the last year, he just uses the Fold during the week and he calls the Flip his weekend phone. He puts a SIM into that. Now, most people obviously aren't going to do that, but it kind of, I would say, defines the usage scenario where if you're not a hardcore user and just a regular person who needs a smartphone, the Flip is totally great. It's also half the price. But if you're someone who's more like you really need to do work on your phone and you prefer having a 7.8-inch display that can fit in your pocket, obviously the Fold is going to allow you to do more. Plus, you get that pen experience, and the pen experience is good because I use it during for photo editing because they have the Magic Eraser now in Android. It's really good for highlighting things that you want to erase. Yeah, you can use your fat finger, but I'll tell you the pen is a lot more accurate, and I've had a lot more success removing things in the background using the S Pen. And the S Pen can also now let you write, and kind of like what Windows is getting now, this ability to write in any text field. So you can use it all the time if you really wanted to, and it'll translate it to text. And the pen works really well. I've always said that about the S Pen. I think the S Pen in a lot of ways is better than Surface Pen. But I don't know. They're and then of course you and I have talked about this, right? Good Lock. If people don't know what Good Lock is, so it's just a
Yeah.
weird thing that Samsung does. They have an app on their store, the Galaxy Store, called Good Lock, and you download it, and within that app are like 10 more apps that you can download. And what these apps allow you to do is completely customize the phone to your heart's content. And there's a lot in that, like whether it's actually I'll show the outer display here, whether it's changing themes and doing the keyboard and all that. You can change the keyboard's, shape and the colors and all this kind of stuff. You can change the notifications. Like it's really kind of endless what you can do. You can spend a lot of time on it. And it really allows you to sort of make the phone, it's answered like solve the little problems I've had with Samsung's UI and little quirks. Speaking of, I've been using exclusively the Samsung UI. I haven't even put Microsoft Launcher on it. So I'm using it as a native experience. And yeah, Samsung UI is, their launcher is actually, it's pretty good. I've had really no issues with it. So I don't know. What do you think about these devices? I know you're not probably going to get one, or are you?
Yeah, I'm so homeless right now when it comes to phones. I don't know where to go. The Duo is. I'm leaving the Duo. It's no longer. I don't want to use it anymore because Microsoft
Sure.
made me hate it. But I don't know where to go. So obviously, originally I was sort of leaning on the Pixel Fold, but I cancelled my Pixel Fold pre-order for a few reasons. One, I just don't like Google's version of Android. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how uncustomizable it is. Like how the home screen, you have the Google bar there permanently, and there's that weird widget at the top that you can't move either. Hate all of that stuff. Don't like that in general. And also, really not a fan of Google's support sort of system, I guess, for phones. Their customer support is quite popularly
Yeah.
terrible, I guess, or what the word ever is.
Yeah.
Not great. So I didn't really want to go through that. Plus, it's a first gen foldable. I don't know if you've seen it. If you look at pictures of the Galaxy Fold, you can clearly the Fold doesn't open all the way flat, 180 degrees, and the screen, even when you do sort of force it to 180, still has like it's a weird what do they call it? Crease. Like it's a weird crease, but the Galaxy Fold, from a tolerance perspective, looks more complete. It's a lot more. I mean,
Yeah.
it's on a fifth generation, of course it is. If you go back to the Galaxy
Right.
Fold 1, you could probably make the same comparisons. But yeah, the outer screen on the Galaxy Fold, it's such a. I really don't like it, and it's tough because I was a Galaxy Fold 1 user. I had the first Galaxy Fold, and I used that for 10 months until the Surface Duo came out from January 2020 to September 2020. And I loved the Galaxy Fold 1. I loved everything about it, even the stupid outside cover screen, because I think I really treated it as like a smartwatch more than anything else. Because that tiny screen was so tiny, you never really used it for anything other than
Yeah.
notifications. And maybe if you wanted to go into Twitter, maybe scroll through Twitter because it's good for scrolling. It's just not good for typing or any like media consumption. On the Galaxy Fold 1, that was great because it was basically unusable. The screen was so tiny. And if you set like a black wallpaper and stuff, it just looked like an always-on display, more or less. It was really cool. Then the Galaxy Fold 2, they made it taller, but it was still really narrow. Galaxy Fold 3 was the same. Galaxy Fold 4 was when they sort of widened it a little bit and made it so it's basically usable as a phone now normally, but it's really weird to do it this way and absolute weird on
I've
its
gotten
stuff.
used to it though. I really
Yeah,
have.
you do get used
Like,
to it. You do come to appreciate the one-handedness from a
yeah.
width perspective. It's still 2
When
2. You
I'm
still
when I
have to
just went
do
grocery shopping, it was really nice
yeah, but
because I
I
could have a
guess from
basket in one hand and
yeah,
phone in the other.
it's really it is nice, but it does mean that I think a lot more people will just want to open the phone, which I guess you're paying for the foldable screen, then open it right and use that screen and enjoy that. And I do think that the quality of Samsung's foldable screens is better than whatever Google's using. OnePlus is supposed to be coming out with their thing at the end of this month. Maybe that would be what I move to. But again, it comes down to like support networks and stuff. It's like if my screen breaks, which it probably will because it's a foldable screen, who's going to help me? Samsung has stores. You can walk into a Samsung store like you can with an iPhone at an Apple store and get it serviced. If you're in like a year's warranty or 2 years warranty, you can walk in and more or less walk out with a fixed phone on the same day or in a couple of days at least. You can't do that with a Google phone. You can't do that with a OnePlus. And that, I think the older I get, the more I value that. When I was young, I was like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. But now I'm like, I don't want a broken phone. I want to have a nice phone that doesn't break, or if it does break, I can get it fixed for as cheap as possible. And officially, I don't want to be going to like a third party place to fix it and stuff, you know?
Yeah, so that's actually a good point too, because Android Central just ran an article, I believe, trashing Samsung's service, but it was based on one experience, the writer's experience. I had a different experience. My Flip 3
I've only had
stopped
good
turning
experiences.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just stopped completely turning on. And so their process works first by you bring it to not an iFixit store. I forgot what it is. It's a chain of stores that they partnered with that are certified to fix the phones. And they looked at it, they plugged it in and did diagnostics, and they're like, your board is dead, you know. And so then Samsung got notified of that, and then they just said, okay, we're shipping out a return box, and it came within like a couple days, like a day or two. And then I shipped the phone out, and I had it back within, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, I want to say. It
Yeah.
was really fast. And it was like, I got the phone back. I couldn't tell they did anything to it outside the fact that it now turned on and worked, but it didn't look like they opened or worked on it. It was pretty nice. So I had a really good experience. And you're right. Google they're on the first generation. Samsung's on fifth, right? That makes a big difference in this space right now.
Yeah, it does.
I know these aren't perfect. They added a new like absorption layer for stress on these devices, which is supposed to help. Time will tell, if there could be issues. But if anyone's going to have more issues, it's going to be Google. Because they're completely new to it. I will say I did try the Pixel Fold while I was out in Korea. Some people had it, and it's a really nice device. It's sort of, I would consider, the more ideal form factor. But like I said, the Fold has things to it I really like too. Like that one-handedness. Actually, I think we kind of forgot about having one-handedness with phones, and
I definitely did.
Not everybody needs it. Yeah, not everybody needs it. A lot of people have worked around it, just gotten used to it, and that's fine. But like I said, when I'm grocery shopping, basket one hand, I got my checklist in the other. I can just operate the phone completely. It's really nice. Or when I'm traveling, So
I'll say if you're a first-time Fold buyer, if you're jumping into foldables this year for the first time, I would recommend the Samsung Fold over any other because of that support network.
Yeah.
But also because I think the hardware on paper is better. I do think the shape isn't as good as, say, the Fold or the upcoming OnePlus Fold or the other Chinese foldables. But I think that is one downside versus a whole bunch of other upsides, including things like the hinge. Like the Pixel Fold hinge is like the Surface Duo hinge, which on the Surface Duo makes sense because it's a 360-degree hinge, it goes all the way around. Whereas on the Pixel Fold, that 180-degree sort of stop out doesn't happen on the Fold. If you've seen Jerry Riggs Everything video, you can see that if you push it further than 180, it will go further than 180, and it will break as a result. Whereas the Galaxy Fold, for example, stops out hard at 180, so much so the hinge will even snap it 180, and that's super satisfying. That's the one thing I remember about the Fold, is that the hinge, once it gets to a certain point, it will go to about, I don't know, maybe 160, and then it will snap to 180, and it's so nice when it does that. Same when it closes. The Duo doesn't ever really snap shut. You just put the two halves together and then it's done. I think the Pixel Fold's the same. Whereas the Galaxy Fold, you close it, and as the two screens get close together, or the two halves of the screen get close together, they will just slam shut. And it's really satisfying that it does that. And the Galaxy Fold, and I know the other ones probably do, but the Pixel Fold doesn't, to my knowledge. And so that is another sort of minor thing that the Galaxy Fold has going for it. Just the high quality hinge, the high quality overall hardware. The only downside is the shape. But I think you can see past it, especially if it's your first foldable. You'll be so in love with it as a foldable that you will be able to see past the odd external screen shape and be okay with it.
I'll also say the prices haven't changed, so 17.99 for the Fold, 9.99 for the Flip.
Yeah.
Although they have upgraded, minimum storage is now 256 gigabyte, no 128s
And
anymore. Which,
if you order before the 10th, you get a free
oh,
upgrade
what?
to
Yeah,
512, at least in the
yeah,
UK.
yeah, yeah. Last time they did it to 256, but yeah, and their trade-in deals are Apple level,
Yeah.
especially if you have an older Samsung device. And it's way better than that's the other thing. The Pixel Fold didn't have very good trade-ins at all. In fact, I think I talked about that with Max Weinbeck. Like, did a trade-in, ordered the phone, then they kept delaying it, and they finally just canceled it on him. And the reason was it had to do with the trade-in value that they gave for it. They decided
Too
was
high.
too high, and so like it was like they were gonna give him like $700 for his Flip 3, I want to say,
That's
or the Flip
ridiculous.
4,
Yeah.
and which it wasn't bad, but it's still under 725 bucks, whatever. But they were like, oh, we'll give you 250. It's just like what? Um, so yeah, Google, it's a shame. Google actually is very much like Microsoft and Surface here, right? You want to make the same
Yeah.
analogy. Google and hardware is very similar to Surface. I would say Microsoft has been more successful, but Google has sort of the same issues. They have product support problems. The Pixel Fold is only in 4 countries right now,
Yeah.
which,
The,
you know,
the other thing about the Samsung and why I think I'd recommend the Samsung over everything else is that you can basically guarantee that there will be a Fold 6 and a Fold 7
oh
and a
yeah,
Fold 8. This is a form factor that's here to stay for Samsung. Whereas
oh yeah,
I don't think you can say the same thing for Google and the Pixel Fold.
and even
this is a
OnePlus is sort of
yeah, like you really can't. I mean, you can
iffy.
probably say the same thing for Huawei and Xiaomi, but they're not operating in the US or the UK for that matter. Here, like they're
Yeah,
only in China markets, and so they're basically out of the question for a lot of people. I've looked at importing a Xiaomi Mix Fold too because I love the look of that thing, but it's like
sure.
I don't want to jump through all those
Yeah, no,
hoops.
I have a Huawei flip phone. It's gorgeous hardware.
Yeah.
But using it without Google is really hard. And I know people are like, "Oh, just flash to play services on." I'm like, dude,
Hmm.
that's a thing. Like, it's really hard to do, and not all phones can do that. You have to dive deep into forums, and it's a lot of work that a lot of phones don't actually support. I did write an editorial though this week about one thing I don't like about my Fold experience. And it's not so much Samsung's fault; it's actually Google's fault, which is at least two of their major apps, Gmail and Maps, aren't optimized for the Fold, which is really bizarre. So when you open Gmail, it's literally just the app blown up. Um, but if you rotate the device, it gives you the two-column view, which is what's expected. In fact, that's what Outlook does. Outlook runs beautifully on this thing. You launch Outlook, you get a column view. You get the message list on one side and your window pane on the other. Oh, it looks fantastic. So obviously it can be done. It can be done on the Fold. You just have to rotate your phone. But as someone who's been using a Fold, I'll tell you, you never rotate the phone. It's just not something you do. Not to mention, most people won't be flipping the phone around just to see this view, which they don't know exists. But if you go to their Pixel Fold, it does do this automatically. So it's an aspect ratio thing, it being recognized. In other words, the Gmail and Gmaps, for that matter, um, aren't recognizing the Fold aspect ratio as a way to give the option, at least, to split the screen and make use of that real estate. It's so stupid. It's on the 5th generation. How is Google not supporting them on this? And I know some people are like, well, it's not a surprise that they would support their Pixel Fold. I'm like, yeah, but no one's buying the Pixel Fold. It's available in 4 countries. Pixels never sell well. That's been the running joke. The only people that use them are the influencers who get them for free, but they don't sell well. They don't have much market support. Yet the you know Samsung Galaxy Fold is the best-selling folding tablet device in the world. It just is, and like it's weird that Google isn't optimizing all their. Now some of their apps are kind of optimized pretty well. But I think it's more an accident, like, oh, it's just kind of recognizing as a tablet, but you are getting like a sidebar at least. But it's kind of a shame on Google, embarrassing that they haven't done more for this. And it's not Samsung's fault. I mean, the only way you could say it's Samsung's fault is, well, they should have chosen a wider aspect ratio. But that's like, I mean, Google at this point should have been like, oh yeah, that Fold thing is pretty big. They're in the 5th generation. Maybe we should just fix Gmail so it looks good on it. And apparently they don't. So that's pretty frustrating. Yeah, I will say though, Telegram and WhatsApp look awesome. So
Yeah.
a lot of apps have kind of been improved. Like Telegram, you launch it, and it's like you get your contact list on one side, message list on the other. WhatsApp looks like that too. So it's really kind of cool using those apps.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's the other reason to not go for the Pixel Fold is because Google isn't doing anything to force apps to be full screen on the big screen. I don't know if you've
yeah.
seen this, but apps like Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and a bunch of others, when you open them on the foldable screen, they're basically pillar boxed, and there's no way to force them to go widescreen because Google is putting it on the developer to update their app natively, whereas OEMs like Samsung are doing the work for the developer and forcing the apps full screen. So if you're on team, make the developer do it, buy a Pixel Fold. However, good luck forcing developers to update their app for your foldable phone that only 100,000 people bought because they're not going to do it. I think Samsung's route's the better way to go by forcing it because it's the only way. It's no Android developers
And
aren't
there's
going to build
cool
for that.
things you can do, like on the Fold, like Twitter, aka X.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. I won't go into a rant, don't worry. Um, that app runs full screen, looks pretty stupid. It's just blown up, right? But you can change the aspect ratio. So you
Yeah.
can make it like 4:3 or 16:9. And it just basically makes it thinner. And then you can move it to the side, whatever side you want. You can keep it in the middle, move it to the left, or move it to the right. So if you're right-handed, you could just move it to the right. And then it becomes almost like you're in tablet mode where you can kind of just use it one-handed plus see more information because it's taller now. And that actually works kind of cool. Obviously, I wish X would be optimized like Telegram and stuff, but
Are we really? Are we
this
really?
is
Are we really doing X? Are we calling it X?
no, let's just call it Twitter.
I
So
was gonna say,
stupid.
I'm calling it Twitter.
Actually, a lot of people are joking that we just call it 10. I'm really
10,
piss them
yeah.
off.
I'm down
Anyway,
for that.
that does it for me with the fold and flip stuff. Like I said, I'll try to get some reviews out for them. But I mean, I'm sticking with the fold right now. I'll play with the flip obviously for the review part, and I really like the flip. If the fold didn't exist, I would use the flip, but I'm going to stick with the fold. It's just a cool device to use. It
Yeah,
really is. So
nice.
expensive though, obviously very expensive. All
Okay,
right, you want to talk about
let's
your review?
yeah, let's real quickly because again we did talk about this a few weeks ago, but my review will be going live on Windows Central over the weekend, hopefully, assuming Richard's able to proof it. Um, Overall, I'm tempted to call this like the best Windows on ARM tablet yet. For a few reasons. One, the thinness and the how light it is. It's just gorgeous. How thin and light this device is. It's a true, basically what we were talking about earlier about how I wish Microsoft would make a true Windows on ARM device. This is the kind of thing you can achieve when you're building a tablet or a device with the intention of it being an ARM thing from the ground up. It's the same thickness as the Surface Pro X, 7.9 millimeters, and you're just not going to find a thinner device with Intel. I don't think they exist. If they did exist, they did never shipped, aka the Surface Neo. But everything else, an Intel device is thicker because they're not as efficient, they don't run as cool. The Qualcomm chips can fit into a 7.9 millimeter chassis, and it makes all the difference. This thing is so portable, so lightweight, and it's premium as well. It's a fully aluminum chassis, which feels great. It's cold to the touch, very fingerprinty. That's thanks to the paint job they're using here. It's a green paint, but it looks great. Very unique color, very unique green. I call it more mint green, I think, but it's very nice. The kickstand. So actually, real quick before we get into sort of the overall device, I do want to say you can get it right now for $7.99, and that includes the keyboard. So the keyboard's usually a $99 extra. The tablet on its own, I think, usually $9.99, but for the summer they're doing a deal where you can get it for $7.99, tablet and keyboard, which I think is an insane deal. For that price, this is a no-brainer. But the deal's now gone. But earlier this week, you could get it from Amazon for $5.99 with a $200 coupon that would apply at checkout. That deal's over now. It's now $6.99, so you can now get a $100 discount on it. So if you're interested in this, I would buy it now before the end of the summer because these discounts are going to probably go away and it will then be full price. I think full price, this thing will be $1,500 with all the accessories and stuff, which is a little harder to recommend, but for $7.99/$6.99, you absolutely go out and buy one of these because it's for the money you pay, you're getting a fantastic device. So with that said, you do feel if you've held a Surface Pro and then you're holding this side by side, there are some cut corners in small ways. Some of this may just be because it's a first gen product from a new company, so they don't really know how to sort of perfect these sort of things. Other things I think is just cut corners. Like for example, these hinges are fine, but they're not super premium. They're not very smooth. They go all the way back 180 degrees more or less, but yeah, they don't feel as tight, I guess, as the Surface Pro hinges, for example. The other thing is they don't have like a plastic strip along this kickstand at the bottom here, so when it's on a table, the bare aluminum is just scratching against whatever surface you're using on, and you can hear it. Whereas on the Surface Pro, there's that plastic strip to protect the metal, which is nice. But those are the only real sort of complaints I have with the tablet itself. Everything else feels super nice. The actual kickstand itself just sits flush with the device, just like on a Surface Pro. It's called the Robo Ancala. You can see on the back there. It's Robo Ancala 2-in-1 laptop. The product is technically called 2-in-1 laptop because for some reason the company Robo Ancala called this Robo Ancala, so it's a bit confusing. But there you are. It's a 16 by 10 2K AMOLED display. The display is gorgeous. Color contrast ratios are amazing. I have no complaints with the screen as well. The only other complaints I have with the hardware on the tablet are with the speakers. The speakers are, I would say, the weakest point of this device. They're not good at all, really. They're fine for maybe video calls and meetings and stuff, but you're not going to be listening to music or watching videos with them because they are bad. There's no bass to them. They're very tinny. Use a pair of
audio
headphones.
And cameras are super hard.
Yeah, the cameras on here actually aren't too bad. It's a 5 megapixel front-facing one, which does 1080p video. It's fine. It's not groundbreaking. The rear one, on the other hand, is actually not bad. It's a 13 megapixel shooter with 4K video capabilities and autofocus. And yeah, I mean, if you're using it to record a meeting or a lecture or something, I think it gets the job done very well. We do have Windows Hello, so Face Unlock is on here, and it works very fast, very much like you would expect. The bezels around the display are super thin, rounded corners, also really nice to see on a device that costs only $800. And then we've got the keyboard here as well. We also got the pen. The pen it's a Surface, it's not a Surface pen, but it uses the same protocol as Surface pens, but it charges magnetically to the device. If you attach it to the right here, it attaches like a Apple Pencil really, and then it charges, and in Windows you get a little prompt that says, hey, the pen's charging, which is cool. And then we've got the keyboard. The keyboard I'm mixed on. It definitely feels cheaper than a Surface Pro keyboard. I mean, it is cheaper. It's only $99. Nice large trackpad though, but the trackpad is, I don't know what's wrong with it. Actually, let me just describe what the keyboard is. The keyboard is described as a dual purpose keyboard, and what they mean by that is it's a keyboard that attaches to the device and you can use it with a direct connection, but it also has Bluetooth capabilities. So if you detach it, you can still use it and it's still connected to the device. Now, I don't know if the touchpad is always using Bluetooth. I don't think it is, but the keyboard is using a direct connection when it's connected. But when it's connected, the trackpad still feels like there's a little bit of latency there. It's no worse than a normal Bluetooth mouse. Like, it's not something that's going to be it's not unusable. But if you have a Surface Pro side by side and you use a trackpad on the Surface Pro, it feels a lot more responsive. So that's the only real downside I have about the keyboard. That, and I don't really like the material it's using. I don't know what it is. It's like this weird plastic. It's not a very high quality keyboard, but again, it's only $99, so there's only so much you can complain about. Keyboard actual typing's really nice. Like, the actual typing experience is fine. So yeah, that's basically my quick review of the Robo Ancala. I do think it's the best Windows and ARM tablet on the market right now. I think it beats the Surface Pro 9 5G because of how thin and light it is. It's a much more portable machine with a 12.6-inch screen. And also, there's not really much competition in the Windows and ARM space. I don't think, can you name me another Windows on ARM tablet with Windows 11? I don't think they're out there, right? Like, if they are, I don't know any of them.
They've come and gone. Yeah, they were previous generations.
Yeah. But this right now is the best one you can buy. I think for the price, for $800 or $700 if you're getting it with the coupon on Amazon, absolutely. Like, there's no reason to not do it. Again, the speakers are kind of bad and the trackpad could be a bit better. But you're only paying $700, so what are you complaining about? It's a flagship Windows and ARM device, Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3, 16 gigs of RAM, half a terabyte storage. Like, it's fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. I can't wait to see what they do next. This is a new company. They've only got this product out right now. They've got the keyboard, the device, and the pen. What will they do next? I'd love to see them make a laptop.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this podcast, as I need to go. We'll do Q&A next week, so sorry if you guys have questions. But you can always hit us up on Twitter. Follow me at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino on Twitter, as well as on Threads, as well as on Instagram, and basically everything else. Follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Same thing for him. He's on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. We do record this live every Friday. We're probably going to switch to 1 p.m. Eastern Time instead of 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time like we did today. So stay tuned for that. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Man, I'm looking at that grey Galaxy Fold they've got. Oh, it looks so nice. I do like that colorway.
It is cool. Gray is awesome.
Oh man.
You saying the Fold or the Flip?
The Fold.
Which one was? Oh, they have gray. I forgot.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
so it's
a
Samsung.com exclusive, so it's not like the normal color they've got.
Oh.
It's like it's got a grey back, but then it has like matte, dark grey rails rather than shiny rails.
Oh snap!
Yeah.
Even can I trade in this one?
All right. Are we doing Q&A? We've got a few minutes to do Q&A, I think, and then we have to head off.
You can do it if you want, but I'm going to head off.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Well, my camera will stop working. But yes, if you want to do Q&A, chat, I'll hang around for a few minutes and we can answer some questions.
All right, everyone. I'll see you next time.
Bye, Dan. Oh, yeah, it froze right at the exact moment. All right, Zach, is 2 or 3 planned for next year? Okay. Here's can I get my camera back up and running? Because I feel like you need to see my face as I discuss these things. Hang on. Is it possible? Let's see, camera capture card. There we go. Is it gonna? Oh, there we are. Oh, you can see the mess in my room. Quick, hide everything. All right, there you go. We can just crop it like that. All right. Hang on. Let's get this in properly. Oh, this is... How about if I just put it in here? Can I put it in here? No. Can I copy you? Yes. And then paste you. Paste as a new source. Yeah, why not? So that can go. Then we can go here. And now it looks like I'm in a movie. Right. So is the Duo 3 still planned for next year? So I don't know is the answer to that. This year was a big shake-up year for Surface. I can tell you that it's never easy to just say when things are coming, because just because Microsoft has an idea about products that will ship at a certain time doesn't mean they will, and oftentimes they don't. This year, the roadmap for this year was looked very different, at the beginning of the year versus what has actually happened. We were supposed to get the Surface Laptop Go 3 in the spring, and that was supposed to ship alongside a Surface Laptop SE2. Both of those products didn't ship. Why? Who knows? But they didn't. So now we're getting the Laptop Go 3 in the fall. Laptop Studio 2 was, to my knowledge, also supposed to ship in the spring. Didn't. Why? Who knows? But now it's coming in the fall. Laptop SE 2, no idea if that's coming this fall. Who knows? That device probably been cancelled. Who knows? That's the kind of thing that I have to deal with when I'm learning about products that are supposed to ship. It's like, okay, just because Microsoft says it's shipping in the spring, will it actually ship in the spring? And so that's the thing. You're asking about Surface Duo 3, which is a product that's well over a year away. Just because they seem to think that it might ship at the end of next year doesn't mean it will. So I can't tell you if it will ship at the end of next year. I would like it to. I'm sure Microsoft would like it to. But there's a lot more that goes into the Duo, the Android Surfaces versus other Surface devices. You have to think. Building a Surface PC is easier because it's a Windows device. Windows is already being built. Microsoft is already building Windows. There's no new team they have to spin up for that. They have to obviously work on firmware, but that's fine. That's something Surface does all the time. That's not a big deal. The Surface Duo or the Surface Android phones are the hardware, but then there has to be a dedicated team to build out the software for it. They have to have a dedicated Android team to do that stuff. And this last year, that team's been busy doing other things. They've been working on Teams rooms on Android and all the other Android-related efforts. So it's a much bigger ask for Microsoft, for Surface to do a Duo, because it requires more resources from other teams, whereas just making a Surface PC kind of doesn't. They don't have to worry about the Windows aspect. They can build their own firmware. Maybe there's some deeper level integration, but it's never anything huge. You know, they don't have to build a whole new OS and UX for it. The only time they did that was with the Surface Neo, and that never shipped. So, you know, that's the thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to the Surface Android phones. It's not just Surface, it's Surface plus Android. There's a whole Android side of things that needs to be thought about. They can't just stick stock Android on there and call it a day. They have to build in their own integrations and their own UX that makes sense on the form factor they're building, because they're not just building a phone. You know, they're not just building a square phone, or you know, they're building a foldable, which has different needs and more effort put into the software. So there you are. The answer is I don't know if it's coming next fall. Let's see here. Are we getting a Surface Laptop 6 this year? If you listen to the podcast, I mentioned Laptop 6 and Pro 10. I have no idea. I've heard so many mixed things about those two things. I've heard they're not coming this fall. I've heard they are coming, but they're commercial only. I've heard nope, they are coming, but they're coming a bit later in November, December, and they're going to be like awesome and with new designs. I genuinely have no idea what to expect with the Surface Laptop 6 and the Surface Pro 10. As soon as I have a more concrete idea as to what's happening with those products, I will let you know. But as of right now, my educated guess is we're not going to get a Laptop 6 and a Pro 10 this fall. That's a next year thing. This fall will be the Laptop Studio 2, Laptop Go 2, and Go 4/3 Plus. What do you think of Cortana's deprecation? I think it's inevitable. I know they've already started doing it, but with Windows Copilot, I mean, of course it was going to happen. Do you know if Surface is still, or do you know if Microsoft is still working on any mobile devices, or do you think they might just be giving up on mobile entirely? Oh dear, I don't know. Again, it ties back to the whole resources thing. You know, for them to build mobile devices, they need an Android team, and the Android team's busy on things that apparently make them more money. So I think it's never say never, but I think right now that whole thing is on hiatus because, you know, I said in the podcast, Surface focuses on Surface. Just because Surface wants to do something doesn't mean it gets made. You know, Surface has built desktop PCs, they've built monitors, they've built slab phones, like, you know, they've built normal phones, they've built foldable phones, they've done it all. But, you know, just because they can put it together in the lab, that's just one part of a long journey from getting something to ship. It's an idea. Sure, they can prototype it internally. Can they produce it at scale? Sure. Okay, but is there a business sense? Is there a business case for it? Is there a market for it? Are we going to make money on it? You know, they have to sell it to the higher ups, all of which, or a number of which, don't really care for Surface. You know, they're always looking at the bottom line. What's making us money here? And so, you know, it's hard for Surface to sell some of those visions and ideas, especially, again, when you're asking for not just hardware, but an entire dedicated software team to work on just this one thing. That was the Duo. It was Duo, and we need an Android team to work on the Duo. It wasn't like they were working on a version of Android for a whole bunch of devices. It was, we're working on Android for Duo. And so it makes even less sense from a business perspective. Will the remaining old parts of File Explorer get redesigned? For example, the file navigation view and the sidebar. Yes, it's all planned. The File Explorer will have an 100% modern UI at some point. I don't know when, but it's all planned because they need it for things coming in the future. That's what I sell that for now. Do you have any new Windows prototype devices? Why Windows ones? Yeah, yes, actually I do, but I can't talk about it. So, yeah. Maybe I'll talk about it eventually. Not today. It's an old thing, so don't worry. If you're Microsoft, if you're listening, it's not about you. It's about other OEMs. Is the tablet that you showed slow with x86 software like reviews said the current ARM surfaces? So Windows and ARM is, you will feel okay. It depends on the x86 app you're running. If you're running a Chromium-based app such as Google Chrome, or if you're running an Electron app such as Slack, yeah, you will feel it. It will feel slow, and you do feel it on the Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3. It's not terrible, but you will notice it. It'll be like, oh yeah, this is running a bit slower than it normally would if it was on an x86 device, or if the app was running natively on ARM. So for me, Windows and ARM is all about optimizing your workflow. So what you sort of end up doing, at least in my case, is you find alternative methods for using the apps you normally use. So if you use Slack, the Windows desktop app, on an Intel device, don't use it. Use the Slack web app. Install it through Microsoft Edge, and it basically looks and feels like the native app, except it's running much faster now on your ARM device because it's using Edge. Same thing for let's see, what else do we use? You can do Telegram as well. Like if you're hell bent on using the first party Telegram client, you can use Telegram Web, and that's more or less the same. Well, it's not the same, but it's mostly there in regards to features. Or my recommendation there would be to use Unigram, which is a UWP, or used to be UWP version of Telegram that's third party, but I think it's got the blessings of the first party developers. But yeah, it's all about optimizing your workflow. Use web apps where you can, in place of Windows apps that aren't natively compiled for ARM. Is my number one suggestion for Windows and ARM devices. If you do that, then it feels great. It feels like a flagship device. What will be your next phone? I don't know. We just had that conversation on the podcast. I'm kind of feeling homeless right now regarding phones. I don't know where to go. Do I go Galaxy Fold 5? Do I go Pixel Fold? Do I wait for the OnePlus Fold? I just don't know. Do I import? Do I get the Iona Magic V2, which is insane looking, but Chinese only? I just don't know. I just don't know. Are there any plans to expand the Surface line or make it more competitive with Apple after the PC market gets better in the consumer space, or will Microsoft only focus on businesses from now on? I think you'll find Surface will never not focus on businesses. They will always cater to their business customers first. That's just the way Microsoft is. They are a enterprise first company, I guess. And to answer your question, I don't think we're going to see them expand to be more competitive with Surface and consumer. I don't see it happening, at least not in the next couple of years. I don't think so. I don't think Microsoft, as an enterprise company, has that drive. Zach, a while ago, Dan mentioned I had learned some bad news. Have you talked about it yet? Yes, just today, in fact. The bad news I had learned was the Surface Go with ARM had been cancelled. I wasn't able to talk about it yet because I was still hearing conflicting things, but at this point, all of the sources who I've spoken to have said the same thing. The ARM version is dead, and the Intel one will be an N200 based thing. So, there we are. Do you know when the first Canary build of Windows 12 comes? Probably June 2024. I don't know when they're planning to announce Windows 12. If they even want to call it Windows 12. Could be at a time when Server 2025 gets released, but we shall see. I guess you're answering the question I just answered. Server 2025 will probably be done in 2024, right? That's usually how that goes. So I assume it will be based on the same code base as whatever Windows vNext is based on. Do you know the future of Windows Cool OS / Windows 10? You mean Core OS? Windows Cool OS, though. That's pretty cool. So Core OS has basically been... Core OS has become something else internally. It's now called Core PC, which is basically Core OS, but with a bigger focus on maintaining support for legacy apps on editions where it makes sense, to my knowledge. So... it's that vision, that whole idea of a state-separated version of Windows that's more secure with faster updates, etc., is still a thing that they want to achieve, and to my knowledge, will be sort of part of the overall story for whatever Windows vNext ends up being. But there will be layers, there will be additions, there will be different levels to it. So it won't just be like 10x where it's all modern and there's no support for legacy apps whatsoever, good luck. It'll be like, hey, so we can do that. There is a modern version, but then we can also step up to where we can run some legacy Win32 programs natively. There'll be a fully fledged one, which is basically just like normal Windows, but state separated. It gives them the flexibility to build whichever versions of Windows they want with whatever level of modern/legacy they want. But yeah, to my knowledge, we won't see any of that until at least the end of 2024 at the earliest. Probably later, because Microsoft can never stick to a schedule to save their lives. Right, last call for questions, and then if there are none, we will head off. Do you guys use Windows Central? Do you guys at Windows Central use generative AI at work? No. It's been a discussion as a company, to my knowledge. There's been discussions about where to use AI or if we can use AI. So far, Windows Central has been has had a big sort of no response to using AI. I guess we don't use it to. We might use it for like title suggestions, like for it's sort of making titles for articles is hard. So if we need some inspiration, we might ask Bing Chat, for example, for like 5 title suggestions, and then you sort of mix and match and come up with something on your own. You never just copy and paste whatever Bing comes up, because Bing isn't that very good at headlines. So you need to sort of give it a little bit of a push and add to it to make it actually worthwhile. But regarding actual written content, no, we don't use it. I don't think we'd ever want to use it. I don't think we're even allowed to use it, because it's disingenuous. I believe CNET or other people have tried using it, and I don't know if it's gone too well for them. So yeah, we're steering clear for now. Will Windows 12 be state separated? It will depend on the device you're using and whether you bought a Windows 12 PC with Core PC or if it's a legacy Windows. Because to my knowledge, and I there's always been discussions about whether or not this will be something that you can upgrade to. But Windows Core OS and to buy, I believe, Windows Core PC, they're too different to make it for there to be an easy upgrade path from legacy Windows to Core PC or Core OS. It's not like running an installer and Windows will just state separate your existing install. Because what if you have programs installed in weird places? What if you've got them installed on an external driver? What if you've got them installed in system or in the Windows folder? I don't know why you do that, but maybe you decided to install an app in there. Like, what happens then? Because state separation means all of the apps are in one place, all of the drivers are in another place, all of the system files are over there, user files are over here. But if you've mixed and matched and put things in different places, how does Windows determine that and move them to the right place, and then also link them so that shortcuts on the desktop stuff still work? It's difficult, right? So I don't think there's an upgrade path. I think there will be different versions of Windows V. Next, there'll be a legacy version for people running Windows today who can upgrade to it. And maybe the UI will be similar. There'll be some differences, who knows. But then you'll also be able to buy Windows on new devices that are state separated. And you do get those enhancements when buying new hardware. That was the plan with Windows 10X, right? There was never going to be an upgrade path to Windows 10X. If you wanted 10X, you had to buy a new device. And so I think the same will happen with Core PC. Do you agree that Windows V Next/12 should be named Windows Cool OS? I think the name is pretty cool. Windows Cool OS. Windows is cool again. Do you think it's possible that Microsoft is waiting for Android to open to third-party stores before reinvesting heavily in mobile? Possibly. There was... I don't know how much I can talk about this. There's, Microsoft... No, I probably shouldn't talk about that. Never mind. The idea of a mobile app store is something Microsoft has thought about. But so is Samsung. Samsung has its own app store, and that doesn't really do well. But yes, Microsoft has certainly thought about Google Play and building an alternative. But again, I just don't think they've got the drive or the resources to pull it off, really. Okay, with that, I'm going to call it here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday. at probably the slightly earlier time of 1 p.m. So follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.